How would you critique Amazon's app? Hey everyone, welcome back to another Exponent product design mock interview. My name is Kevin Wei, and on today's show we have Ben. We're going to be doing an app critique today. And before we get started, Ben, do you want to just tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Ben. I'm a senior product designer. Right now I work at Shopify, where I lead merchandising for point of sale systems.
Sweet, thanks for coming on today's show. So today we're going to be doing an app critique, and this is what I'd like to ask. How would you critique Amazon's app?
Yeah, so first I would start with like the problem in the users. So like if we look at Amazon, what's the primary app problem that's trying to solve? So potentially e-commerce is trying to give people an avenue to buy items as well as services for those specific companies that Amazon has, such as Whole Foods, pharmacy, in-store products. In terms of the user, the primary user, it could be really anyone. I think with Amazon and how it's grown over the period of time, it's kind of adopted a lot of different types of users, right? So you can think of people that use it particularly for like specific reasons, like pharmacy. Some people use it for Whole Foods. Some people would get for like regular deliveries. Obviously, like there's also like merchants that now can like, even as a user can like post items and sort of display their items to a larger audience to help gain traction. In terms of the business model, I mean, if we think of like Amazon, it's kind of like quick delivery, low cost, abundance of items. So like basically like those three different areas kind of encompasses Amazon business model. And then in terms of the business goals, it's like revenue, trying to drive growth, daily active users. I mean, if you think of Amazon, it competes with a lot of different companies such as Walmart, Target, that are major competitors in the field. So, trying to stay on top of that and making sure that those goals are in mind when the product is continually to be defined.
Makes sense. Why don't we start on the homepage? Can you just tell me a little bit about the homepage, what you see here?
Yeah, so looking at this homepage, obviously like looking at it, it's talking about, like the basically if we like want to go over like the structure, we have like the banner at top that kind of advertises different things to you, potentially like promotions that Amazon may have. Obviously, they have items that I potentially used in the past or have bought in the past or potentially looked at as a secondary item on the page. They have deals. If you look at this, you have like items for maybe like that are more ephemeral, like for Father's Day that potentially I want to buy. They have reviews, items that potentially I would want to buy in the future. Again, I think it's mostly structured around what I bought, which is great because like personalization is key in terms of user growth. In terms of the overall use of space, I think there's a lot of improvement that could be done. There's obviously like a lot of the space is kind of, it's pretty condensed. There's probably like, there's not a clear information hierarchy around this. So like in terms of navigating the page is a little dizzying because there's a lot of breaks in the page. And then like those breaks aren't very clear of like what actually is the thing I'm looking at. So like, am I seeing Father's Day? Like, what if I never had a father? There's things that potentially like here could break the experience for a user. I think in terms of, placement of like UI, like add to cart, like some of these things are kind of hard to see. So if there's something that potentially I want to see and like want to buy like this next item, like add to cart kind of from an accessibility standpoint doesn't really stand out to me. Like it could be like across the page to make it a lot easier to access. I think in terms of guidelines, I feel like it kind of follows its own guidelines. Amazon's a huge company, so potentially like they've evolved quite a lot over time. So I don't see it really adopting Material or iOS. It's sort of its own design system. And based on that, it's kind of establishing its own sort of patterns that it uses. I think in terms of user goals that are accomplished with these different features, like again, the goal is to have these quick sales, allow for access to items and have a really quick experience to get to these items. I think they provide avenues into that. So there's a lot of different entry points into these items, but essentially the lack of personalization in some of these make it seem like more like ads which potentially like if in terms of improvement, I would like to see like more why I'm seeing specific things. Like in the UX world, a lot of this like, the whole thing about privacy and being able to understand if like I'm being advertised specific items, like is there a reason why? Are you pulling this from some other source? Is this because I bought this in the past? I think that's not super clear. I think in terms of, things that they've tried to do, they're trying to use other avenues to gain money through like ads, right? So it's kind of like they're a little bit randomly placed. So it's like we've got like toilet paper and paper towels and then like Paramount Plus. So in terms of, the improvements, I think there could be like a better hierarchy in terms of the items that you see and why you're seeing them.
Makes sense. I see like a lot of grid layouts here. Is that particularly concerning to you as a designer?
I think like, yeah, there's another, like, I think that's just how Amazon is. I think Amazon has an approach around, as a company, they don't always follow the norm in terms of layouts and patterns and UX principles. It is a little dizzying because they do have like a gallery here and then like kind of this semi pseudo grid here. And then like kind of start for like a 4 grid and then 4 and then 4, 4, and then like one large picture and then like banners. So I think they could benefit having like specific layouts, especially like if we look at like mobile, like this kind of becomes dizzying when it becomes like 2 grids and then 1 grid. It makes it harder to scan items, in my opinion. I think they're doing the right thing in terms of showing the items in not necessarily like a gallery view, which potentially people won't scroll to see these things. So they are trying to like optimize for the space that they have in terms of showing the most items, which obviously in the end of their goals to have conversions. I think in terms of like visual design, like if we look at this, right, like the app is branded better. Like it used to be like not as branded, but now like they've kind of established their own kind of branding. Like you can see like the blue cross, like they have like Alexa integration at the bottom to kind of like give you more emphasis on like voice interaction if that's something that you're interested in, interacting with. I think in terms of the visual design treatments of things, like they have like kind of a skeuomorphic design for like add to cart, and it's not really clear if that's intentional or not. So like, is it like that's just because that's their pattern, or is that like based on like the legacy of the company and how they've kind of designed over a period of time? I think typecase, there's kind of accessibility issues that you can see here. So I would like try to make these more bold, like they're very like thin typography choices. So like having like something like, what do you think of this item, but have that applied to some of these titles to add more clarity around hierarchy. Because to me, it kind of blends into the background. And I'm assuming they're putting more emphasis on the images than the titles, but at the same time, like I'm not just going to look at images and probably, or as a user, you wouldn't probably look at images and be like, I'm going to tap this. You kind of want to see why you're seeing that specific thing. So if you miss the titling, it's kind of important in terms of actually making that purchase.
Yeah, like as I'm going through, I see a bunch of like household goods like paper towels, and I see a bunch of clothing. I have to do a lot of thinking to see like, hey, like why am I seeing all these categories? So if they had like more hierarchy, maybe like bolded text, that would be helpful. Maybe we can move on to another page, maybe the search page, and you can let me know what you see there and what you think about it.
Yeah, sure. So when I tap into search page, I'm thinking it's showing me like things I've searched for in the past, which is great, right? Because it's like always when you like do some search, like, the main purpose of search is to fulfill your intent. So like they're kind of following, I would say, like the standard principles around search and having like some like, previously searched for specific items. I think one thing they could do to like kind of improve this is to be able to have more structure around their search. So if it's like, these are all the previous things I've searched for, is there like anything they recommend I search for? If I'm like a person that hasn't used Amazon before, like, do they have like recommended things? I think that's the space here is not utilized correctly in that sense. I think these tap targets, again, are hard to like tap. Like, I mean, I could accidentally tap probably a bunch of these, and then like even like tapping this, I could accidentally delete the item instead. So it's like, I think it's all about like having that accessibility for the search. And especially like if the main function is to like get to the next thing and like fulfill my intent, like I want to be able to, one, have options, and then two, be able to like sort of distinguish between what I've searched for and kind of like maybe even like divide those things apart. So I like know, and I have like a clear mental model of those specific like different UI elements on the screen. And I think when it looks like find the look or scan products, I think, you know, this is like part of the actual like screen too, like where it has like these two buttons. I think like find a look, for example, like goes to shopping for like fashion. I usually like, I mean, I'm not like a huge person that's into fashion that would probably like go do that. And then they have scanned products, right? So it's like another way to like basically search for an item. So I think I can understand why they place these here. I just think they feel a little bit random, right?
Yeah,
So,
it kind of looks like they're trying to make it an extension of the keyboard here.
yeah, it looks almost like part of my keyboard. So to me, I want to like dismiss it and I can't because it's covering like there's no scroll here. Like I actually can't scroll. So from like an interaction design standpoint, like I can't really like actually get to the bottom of the list because this is actually covering it. So if I want to tap this item, I actually don't know what it is. So that's an accessibility issue right there. Actually, it's Whole Foods, I guess, but it's very hard to distinguish like these specific sections from each other. And I think in terms of Amazon's overall arching like, you know, business strategy, they have so many different companies they've acquired over time. So like you can either search for items via like Whole Foods or the actual departments around Amazon and like the third-party partners that they work with. So it's like even distinguishing that might help a lot too in terms of having like this concise hierarchy between like Amazon proper versus like Whole Foods, which I feel like is kind of a separate category.
Yeah, makes sense. Maybe we can move on to another page. How about your profile?
Yeah, so the profile, I think in terms of the like structure and the purpose of this page is obviously like, it's like your page that potentially is all about like your orders, like what you bought, you know, your count, any sort of payment issue, any payment information that you might have saved, you know, like things that you bought in the past, lists, gift card balances. So like kind of a standard page in terms of, you know, your typical profile layouts. I think in terms of placement of UI elements, I mean, if you look at the structure, it kind of like showcasing first these four main actions, right? So your orders, to get to your orders, buy again, which makes sense. Your count, your lists. To me, like one thing I'm a little bit confused on from a get-go is that like your account, like I'm not sure if that is the same as this. So like to me, account also like indicates that this profile picture would be like also your account. So I think that's not super clear. I think in terms of, you know, if we keep going down the structure, like orders that I've done in the past, I think this is great, but except if I want to see like all the orders, I have to go to a separate child page to see them all, versus like having the scroll, which I think the intention around this was to essentially showcase, you know, more information on and break up for showcase more information on the screen without having to go to separate pages. You know, there's things I was like keep shopping for, lists, which I don't usually make, buy again. I think in terms of like the overall use of space and interaction design, I think, you know, obviously it feels a little bit overwhelming because you just like, you have like a 4-grid layout and then you have a gallery and then a 6-grid layout or 3-grid layout. So it's kind of dizzying in terms of how like the information is parsed. So instead of like having all these sections kind of follow like a different layout, maybe have the same layout or have like ways that you can maybe even like encompass some of these actions into like icons at the top. So like you have like more room to like even showcase orders and maybe have orders like showcase instead of just the item, maybe showcase more metadata that potentially you'd need to see like to actually maybe reorder, or you want to see like specific information about that order if it's shipped or not. I think, you know, in terms of, you know, the buttons and layouts, like I think there's obviously like we have some issues around like they have like many different types of buttons. So like we have this secondary button where it says see more, but then we also have like these other like sort of pseudo buttons here, which I'm not sure if these are actions or like, or like, are they CTAs? Like, I'm not really sure like what that distinction is. So like as a designer, to me, like there's no clear understanding of like what's tappable and what's not in terms of like, is this a button or is this like going to bring me to a separate page? Is this going to expand the page? I think that's super important.
Yeah, I'm also kind of like curious why some of them say see all and some of them say see more.
Yeah, I think it's probably in terms of constraints that they potentially could have been dealing with their engineering team. Potentially, like for this, the intent might have been to just showcase all items in specific like sort of like container, so you can see like everything that you potentially like would continue to buy. And maybe that's more important than just seeing your list, like all list information. So it might be like more pertinent to like making a purchase, but like orders to me, and essentially as like if we follow like looking at the business model around like having these quick transactions, and that's like Amazon's business model, like I have to like tap to see more, and then I only see like one of the items, or I never see like a bunch of the items, but like potentially I have to go to a separate page and then another page to actually see more data to that item. So it's kind of like 3 taps to just to kind of see that information. So like you've kind of like, if you're like, say you need to like look for more than one order, like there's no way to kind of like quickly scan that without having to like, like maybe I need to understand like the delivery date or like what I used to purchase it. Like I have to like go 2 layers deep to kind of like see that information. I think visually like they have clear sections, which is good. But I just think like in terms of the patterns that they use to like lay out that information and the visual hierarchy kind of is confusing.
Totally. Cool. Thanks for walking us through these 3 screens. I think for the purposes of this mock interview, we could stop here. And before we wrap things up, Ben, I'm wondering, just for the audience who's watching at home, do you have any sort of tips on like how you would tackle just like general app critique questions?
Yeah, I think just having like a structure around it. So like, with virtual interviews these days, you can always have like notes in front of you. You can put post-it notes on your computer. There's a lot of ways that you can like, navigate complexity when it comes to these kind of interviews. Like, I mean, you're not going to know exactly what the app they're going to pick. But I think, you should have some sort of clear way of addressing the app, like, from looking at the business model, like what is the company about, right? Who are the users? Like kind of going through like the structure, like what, like sort of how's the space being used, like the information architecture, going to like the actual UX and then the visual design. So having like a clear sort of strategy around answering the questions or kind of like addressing the critique, I think helps the interviewer actually understand your way of thinking a lot better, right? So if you kind of just dive right into visual design, they kind of figure that you might have missed the whole like idea of like, what is this app about? Like, do you actually understand like the users, So like having this kind of strategy around, a structured response for app critique, I think helps a lot just in terms of even your thinking and then also their thinking of like, how they record that information.
Cool. Yeah, a lot of structure, thinking broadly before going deep definitely makes a lot of sense.
Broad then deep. Yeah, and if they ask you specific questions, just kind of understand that structure, have it in front of you, and do your best to answer those questions. But normally they're there, they're not there to like, again, they're there to kind of like work with you. So even like, like I've done interviews with Facebook that are very much like they're like there's an app critique question at Facebook, and it's kind of like even like working with the interviewer and kind of like seeing eye to eye on things, so there's like a little bit of politics there too. So just kind of like have fun with it. The more you have fun with it, the more they kind of you're like exude confidence.
Yeah. You probably want to treat it like a conversation, right? There's kind of like a song and dance to it. Like it's not just like a one-sided spew of vomit of information.
Exactly. So just have fun with it. Don't be nervous. It takes practice. Like first couple times I've done it, like I didn't do well, but then you kind of understand it. You start learning more about, how you should have it. Obviously, like, even using these apps every day, you have opinions in your head, right? So just start talking about them, like obviously have a structure around it, but like, if you have an idea, like talk about it. I had some ideas for like Spotify and they're like, these are great ideas, so you can just kind of like talk about what you really think, how like that app can be improved, and like, don't really hold back on like criticizing it, just be like open.
Sweet. Thanks, Ben. And I think these are all great tips. And for the viewers at home, good luck with your upcoming product design interview.
Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons below to let us know that this video was valuable for you. And of course, check out hundreds more videos just like this at tryexponent.com. Thanks for watching and good luck on your upcoming interview.